Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Haqiqat Show, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. My name is Daniel Haqiqatjou. I'll be your host, and today we have a very interesting episode for you on a scandal that kind of went under the radar. And it's a shame because this is a scandal that has very big significance for the Muslim community around the world, but especially in the United States. This is a scandal that is really shocking when you look at the details of it. And it involves what I like to term the Dawah Mafia. Basically, the group of quote unquote too big to fail imams, du'at, speakers, Muslim speakers, that they peddle this type of liberal Islam, feminist Islam, that is popular on social media. Their stuff gets endless views, but they're distorting Islam in the name of political correctness and overall liberal acceptability. This is the Dawah Mafia. But what makes them a mafia is that they will silence their critics to the best of their ability. They do this through blackballing their critics, calling their critics names, defaming their critics, spreading false rumors about their critics. These are things that I have experienced over the years of critiquing this Dawah Mafia. And the whole history, one of these days we'll discuss on the show, inshallah. But, if you're familiar with my social media posts, I give a lot of information about these types of tactics, these types of distortions. The Dawah Mafia wants to be the only game in town, and it makes them look bad when people point out that they are deliberately distorting key Islamic concepts in order to appease liberal values, feminist values, secular values, etc. So this particular scandal is very telling. It really lets us see in depth how the Dawah Mafia operates, and it involves one of these figures that has been propped up as a scholar or a shaykha, an ustadha, someone who we should respect and take Islamic knowledge from, because she has the Islamic credentials and she has the secular academic credentials. She's associated with Stanford University, for example, and therefore she is an authority. But when we actually look at her work, we see that a lot of it is actually fraudulent. And this was exposed. And I will tell you exactly what happened with the details and point you to information where you yourself can look and see exactly what took place in this scandal and how it unfolded. So this shaykha is Rania Awaad. Now, I won't give an entire background regarding who Rania Awaad is, but she started coming onto the scene and was promoted heavily by other institutions within the Dawah Mafia, other figures within the Dawah Mafia. Her primary affiliation has been Khalil Center. This is a group that claims to provide mental health services to the Muslim community. They're based out of the US, of course. And then you have also Yaqeen Institute, who has promoted her. Muslim Matters, which is this defunct blog site that would put out her material, and others as well. And what's interesting is that these outlets promoted her false research. They promoted her and continue to promote her as this kind of authority figure, this respected shaykha, despite the fact that she has put out this false report or this false article that makes a very shocking claim. That makes a shocking claim that then was debunked and shown to be fraudulent. And the ethical violations that occurred in this whole process are quite disturbing. That you'd have someone behave in this way and claim to be, a shaykha or a Muslim scholar who will lecture to the community. So for the first part of the show, we'll look at this whole scandal. We'll look at some of the details. And then in the second part, we connect it to her broader work in the Muslim community, how such a person is being put in front of your Muslim sister, your Muslim wife, your mother, your daughters, and she is being touted as this Muslim woman role model. Is she a role model? Should she be taken as a role model? We'll look at one of her lectures, actually. And this was a lecture that someone asked me to review and react to. So it's about a 30-minute lecture. I'll play the lecture and I'll provide thoughts and reactions to it in the second half of the show, inshallah. But first, let's look at what this scandal has been all about. And this is, more than a year and a half or 2 years old, but it's significant enough that we should talk about it because it didn't really get the kind of coverage it should have. I didn't see as many people aware of it, and I still see this Rania Awaad being promoted. And that is disturbing. That is a problem. There has been no accountability. This is a big problem, actually, with the Dawah Mafia. They believe that they are above accountability. So even when they do things that are damaging to the community, damaging to Muslims, they feel absolutely, they take no responsibility for that. They don't own up to it, and they don't retract what they have put out that is false, damaging, distortion of deen, etc. So this is a big problem. We have to talk about it. So I don't really care if you are a fan of Rania Awaad, you think that she's great, you listened to a talk of hers and it really inspired you. Okay, that's fine. Put that aside. But don't you want the people who you are listening to, the people that you take as a source of religious knowledge, don't you want them to be honest when they make a mistake? Don't you want them to be honest if they made more than a mistake, to own up to that and to correct that? Isn't that the expectation we should have? If you go to the hospital and you trust the doctor and the doctor gives you medicine that makes you better, okay, great. You're very appreciative of that doctor. But what if he gave you medicine that has long-term negative side effects? Maybe the medicine that he's given you makes you at a higher risk for dangerous diseases like cancer. Would you then be as appreciative? Yeah, he gave you the medicine that provided you relief in that moment, but it puts you at potential risk for future problems. So would you still have the same view of that doctor, especially if he gave you the medicine without telling you about those risks? Well, that's the case with a lot of these imams, shaykhas, part of the Dawah Mafia, compassionate imams, as I call them, in a sarcastic way, because they misappropriate the concept of compassion. They're like this kind of doctor. They give you something that makes you feel good. If you're sick in terms of your iman, or you feel down in terms of your connection to Islam, they will give you that kind of relief or that instant relief at that moment. But are they giving you a type of medicine that is going to make you sick because it's going to lead you down the path of deviance? It's going to teach you and make you accustomed to a type of liberalization of Islam, a distortion of Islam to match with the dominant political status quo and the liberal morality that people around the world have adopted? That would be a disaster, because that's threatening your akhirah. So if that's the case, then you should be wary of these figures, and you should want them to be held accountable by someone like me or others. So with that introduction out of the way, let's share the screen here. So this is the article that was published. You can see here, just because of YouTube's terms of use, I'm not going to say the word there because it could get the video flagged, but let's just say unaliving, okay, as a euphemism. Unaliving yourself. So they wrote an article or published this report in a recognized journal, this JAMA Psychiatry Journal, and it is, reputable. But, as we'll see, JAMA, the journal, doesn't really authenticate the data. This seems strange. Like, why would they publish a journal article and not authenticate the data, make sure that the data is accurate, the analysis that has been done of the data is accurate? They don't do that. They just publish the research as long as you have this kind of academic affiliation. So the shocking result of this research that Rania Awaad did, and you can see her name, she's the primary author of this, and then you have others. You have, for example, Human Keshavarzi, Dalia Mugahed. If you don't know Dalia Mugahed, she's basically this governmental agent. We can have a whole episode on her at some point. Hamada Talib. This is another one of these liberal Muslims who's an academic. And they're part of this, mental health, Muslim mental health grift. And this is a big topic. And the episode is not dedicated to the mental health grift, but I'll point you to some resources. But the result of this report was that Muslims, compared with other religious groups, compare Muslims with Christians, Protestant, Catholic, compare them to Jews, compare them to atheists, Muslims attempt unaliving yourself twice at twice the rate of these other groups. Can you believe that? If I told you that did you know that Muslims attempt to unalive themselves at twice the rate? Wouldn't that be shocking to you? Wouldn't that be alarming? More than atheists. And this goes contrary to what Muslims understand of ourselves, of our community. That, being a Muslim, it gives you purpose. It gives you a sense of accountability. You know that you are living this life is a test. If you face difficulty, if you face hardship, then Allah is always there. His mercy is always there. There's not any kind of pain that you experience, even the pain of a thorn in your finger, that Allah is not going to recompense you for, pay you back for, reward you for, as long as you're patient, as long as you have sabr. We know all of these things. So aren't these values going to reduce this rate of unaliving yourself? So when we hear that even more than atheists, even more than other groups that are, the level of religiosity is not as high, Muslims are at twice the level. This was the research. It was shocking. It was immediately promoted in all of these different outlets, in all of these different journals. So NPR, for example, published a report or an article covering this. American Muslims are 2 times more likely to have attempted unaliving themselves than any other group. And it gives this kind of story. It gives the National Unaliving Yourself Prevention Lifeline. And then it gives, this story. But the center of the article is Rania Awaad's research paper. That is the whole point of this article. What is interesting is that this was published in August 2021. If you go to NPR, now this page has been deleted. This article is no longer there. It's no longer available. So why did NPR? There's no retraction, of course, but why did NPR take out this article? Well, as we'll see, there's a good reason for it. It's because the research, it was completely made up. The data was completely fudged. So I also covered this whole scandal when it came out on MuslimSkeptic. So I gave some details you can go through. This article, just go to MuslimSkeptic.com and search for Rania Awaad. And I give a lot of background information about how Dalia Mugahed has been involved with this kind of shoddy research and pushing research as a way for political manipulation of the community. She will publish research that the ISPU, the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding, which she was the executive director of, but no longer, She basically pushes research that, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, for example, they put out data that, well, most Muslims actually support abortion. That kind of politically charged, or an increasing number of Muslims are supporting LGBT, right? So any kind of mainstream democratic political cause that is looking for support, they immediately publish research to suggest that, yes, when we look at the Muslim community is greatly in favor of the latest part of the Democratic Party platform. So this is not really a research organization. It is a political advocacy organization masquerading as a research organization. And so Dalia Mugahed and ISBU have put their tentacles. And again, she is government affiliated. She, will post pictures of her times going to the Eid banquets in the White House. And she was literally in the Obama administration. She was part of the committee that developed the countering violent extremism program that targeted Muslims. She was a key part of normalizing CVE in the Muslim community, encouraging Muslim organizations to work with the government with this kind of anti-Muslim, anti-Islam program for the Muslim community to police themselves. If you don't know what CVE is, maybe you're in the UK, it's the analog of Prevent, or Prevent in the UK was based on CVE in the US. So Dalia Mugahed, this is the kind of agent that she is. And of course, she has she had for many years a very close relationship with Yaqeen Institute and Omar Soleiman. But anyway, that's for another episode. So here is the NPR article. Immediately, Muslim Girl, if you know of this PSYOP, Muslim Girl PSYOP, they also feature Shaykha Rania, this Horma project, which is Ingrid Mattson, another government agent's project, also features Rania Awaad. So anyway, you can read this article. So then immediately when this research was published, people started questioning it. Like, really? Are you serious? Like, how this doesn't pass the sniff test? It seems very strange that there could be twice the rate for Muslims as opposed to atheists and other groups. This is quite unbelievable. And when we look at other studies that compare Muslims to other groups, Muslims have the lowest rates of unaliving yourself. You can look at many different studies, and you can go, if you want to actually click on the reports and the links. These are just screenshots. Many studies show this over and over and over again. Look, their unaliving yourself rate per capita, basically, according to religion, Muslim is at the very bottom. Atheists are at the top. Then you have Buddhists, Christians, and Hindus, etc. So this is something that has been proven again and again and again. So for Rania Awaad to come and break, this status quo is shocking. And the research, you better have very good data. You have to have very good research methodology to overturn years of consensus on this topic. So someone took it upon himself to debunk Rania. And this is where the story gets interesting, because the person who debunks Rania Awaad is another researcher. And interestingly, it's a researcher who is at Yaqeen Institute. So this is Dr. Usman Umarji. And he did an analysis. He went back and he looked at the regression analysis of the data. And he pointed out problems. He pointed out fallacies and mistakes in their regression analysis. Basically, the math, the statistical analysis, I can't reproduce on the stream, but I'll point you to an article if you want to go read a summary of it that will go through that. So this is Dr. Osman. I don't know if he's still affiliated with Yaqeen. Maybe. I haven't checked. We can look that up. But it's interesting. He's at Yaqeen, she's at Yaqeen, and he's calling her out and saying that this is causing a lot of commotion and anxiety in the community. Yes, of course. If you come up with this kind of data and you say, well, we have an epidemic of unaliving ourselves in the Muslim community, this is a shock. This is going to cause a disturbance. You're raising it's basically like screaming fire in a crowded theater. You're going to rattle the cage, basically. And Dr. Usman is saying that, look, this is unacceptable because your data doesn't actually support this conclusion. The conclusion is false. And he published an entire analysis debunking Dr. Rania Awaad's research. And this is awkward. This is awkward because Yaqeen Institute, or as some like to call it, Yes Queen Simpstitute, is promoting Rania Awaad, and they're promoting her program. So this is the shocking part. This is the shocking part, is that Rania Awaad publishes this research in the JAMA journal, and at the same time, she launches a Unaliving Yourself program. And this is, this, you can see the screenshot. I'll make it bigger. So training 500 imams. So she has this organization, Meristan, and train 500 religious leaders in Unaliving Yourself response training. So she's going to train 500 imams. Yes, Queen Simpstitute is promoting her while touting, this kind of garbage research, fraudulent research. Because this is not Yes Queen Institute just promoting Dr. Shaykha Rania. They're specifically promoting her as an expert in mental health and talking about her, Unaliving Yourself research, and then they promote her program. So this is a conflict of interest. This is a conflict of interest. Why? Obviously why? You are putting out research that supports your business. You're putting out this research that, we have an epidemic of unaliving ourselves in the Muslim community. This is an absolute epidemic. Guess what? I have the solution. I'm going to provide training. Just pay me, $1,000. And then they're collecting zakat for this. They're collecting donations for this type of work. So you're generating the demand for your business. This is completely unethical by every standard, an Islamic standard and also an academic standard. And these kinds of things were pointed out. Oh, by the way, look at this screenshot. This is shocking. Dr. Rania Awaad. Data collected through the Khalil Center shows that 1 in 3 Muslims have thought about unaliving themselves during the last few months. It's vital that we normalize these feelings. 1 in 3? So go to the masjid, for Salatul Jummah, and, you look to your left, look to your right, look to yourself. One of you has considered unaliving himself, according to this amazing research trumpeted by Yaqeen Institute. I mean, this is so irresponsible. It is so irresponsible. Why? Because it means that the Muslim community is suffering from such severe mental health problems. And, mental health problems exist. I'm not denying that. I'm not like some of these guys who will say, depression, just go to the gym and lift weights and your depression is going to go away. I don't believe that. I think that there is a real thing as being depressed, being very low energy, not feeling like doing much, not seeing any direction for your life. Of course, a lot of people do go through that. And it's the big reason for it is that we live in a very depressing world. The modern world, the liberal world order that has been created is a very depressing place for a variety of reasons. But 1 in 3, 1 in 3 have considered in the past few months, forget about like a lifetime, like just recently. So this doesn't pass the sniff test. And so you go to this article, Working Towards Ihsan newsletter. I recommend that you subscribe to this newsletter. This is Brother Ahmed Sheikh who runs it, and I know Brother Ahmed personally, and I've interviewed him on the channel actually before, many years ago. But he has this full analysis. Who lied about Muslim unaliving yourself? And he really presents it very well. He goes through why the material in the original journal article was mistaken, false. And then he also covers the drama that followed, because Dr. Osman, he called out Rania on Twitter. And he said that, look, I published this response to your article. You have some serious mistakes. What's your response? And the way that Rania and her co-authors responded was by saying that you are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. We have all of the data verified by independent statisticians and biologists. Actually, let me get that correct. Let's see. So here, this was the response by Dr. Osman. The research was not accurate. The journal published my brief comment highlighting the errors in the research. The published comment is condensed from an exhaustive statistical analysis. Then this is the Talib co-author, a complete lie. The ISPU data is public. No cooking numbers. JAMA is the highest nerd bar. Our study was blindly reviewed, including our data, by JAMA. JAMA found no errors. When Osman approached us, we had 3 independent statisticians check our math and his. No scientist backs his math. Wow, okay, so that is a decisive response. Like, sorry, Dr. Osman, you don't know what you're talking about. And then Rania Awaad reiterated that. After careful review, JAMA denied Dr. Umarji a platform to publish his claimed correction to our study on U.S. Muslim unaliving attempts and reconfirmed no errors in our analysis. Instead, he took to Twitter, causing mass confusion. We welcome feedback, but not disinformation. So shut it. We sent our full data set to 3 separate statisticians at top-tier institutions who independently ran the entire analysis. They each independently found that there were no errors in our analysis. In fact, the suppressor effect claim turned out to be baseless. Upon review of our 10-page detailed response to the claims, JAMA concurred there were no errors in our analysis. Furthermore, they didn't find enough merit to his claims to even publish them formally in their journal as a standard protocol should there have been a real error. So look at the condescension. So then Ahmed Sheikh breaks it down. These are the claims of the authors. There are 3 separate statisticians from top-tier institutions who found no errors. JAMA found no errors in the analysis, and the data was blindly reviewed by JAMA. So then he says, while the identity of the statisticians is secret, it's impossible they found the suppressor error baseless since the authors themselves did not believe the suppressor error was baseless. And he will get to that. I verified from JAMA editors I spoke with that the other 2 claims by Dr. Awaad were false. So this is detective work from Ahmed Sheikh. He actually goes and contacts JAMA, contacts their editors, and he spoke with them. And he wanted to fact check. Is it true that JAMA found no errors? Nope. That's not true. They just made it up. And was the data blindly reviewed? Nope. That's not true. So they're just, where are they getting this from? The JAMA editors are contradicting them. So this is where it gets really interesting. The problem is the authors themselves, in their rebuttal to JAMA Psychiatry, admitted Dr. Omarji's claim had validity. So privately, they're saying, yeah, there is some validity here. They did not disclose this to the public or Dr. Omarjee, who they publicly attacked, accused him of spreading disinformation, called him a liar, and even claimed that the error he found was baseless. The authors themselves privately told JAMA in their response, and this is their response. You can go, if you want to read this article, I linked it in the description, so you can go and click on it. Same with the MuslimSkeptic article. It's all linked in the description. And they explain that, yeah, there is an issue here. So there is validity. But they try to explain it away. The author sent this to JAMA before telling the Muslim community on social media the suppressor effect was baseless and that Dr. Omarjee was a liar and a troll peddling disinformation. Both of these cannot be true at once. Doctors Awaad and Talib lied to the Muslim community and unjustly attacked Dr. Omarjee. They lied. They lied to the Muslim community. Okay, so JAMA never claimed there were no errors. That's both ridiculous and explicitly against JAMA's terms of use, because JAMA, if you go to their terms of use, they don't rerun data. They're not checking the data. So Dr. Rania is making these claims about JAMA, but she has no clue. And then one of the JAMA editors said, Dr. Awaad does not speak for JAMA. She's making stuff up. So then this is where it gets crazy. So the criticism was made. They found that there is this kind of issue. There's this error. It's a valid concern, but they still want to keep their conclusion. So they rerun the numbers. And then they change the numbers. They change specifically the p-value. So I'm not going to go into a detail on what p-values mean in statistics, but it's like a measure of statistical significance. So they basically played with the p-values and changed them in order to make their results, these bogus results, significant, in order to fudge for the suppressor error that Dr. Osman Omarjee dug out and found out. So this is shocking. This is shocking. And then this is how Ahmed Sheikh describes it. Data Frankensteining. You're just Frankensteining the data. You're cooking up the numbers, right? And then he, provides the screenshots to show this kind of p-hacking, p-value hacking, fudging the math in order to get the result that you want. Okay, so this is shocking. This is shocking that you are so committed to this bogus conclusion that Muslims are unaliving themselves at twice the rate of atheists and other religions. So to preserve that, you have to fudge the numbers and be very dishonest about it. Publicly blast your critics as trolls and liars. Dr. Osman was one of these critics. I was another one. And, you call yourself a shaykha. You call yourself a sheikh. Oh, she's going to teach the Muslim community about the Quran and Sunnah. Oh, yeah. When you engage in this kind of abuse of the community, you're abusing the Muslim community and taking advantage of them, collecting donations on the basis of this scaremongering that you've done. So it's absolutely inexcusable, especially because she's not apologetic. The research hasn't been retracted. She hasn't made any kind of retraction. She still enjoys her position. She's still getting invited by the Dawah Mafia, being put on a pedestal to promote whatever bogus ideas that she has. Clearly, she has a big problem with being detached from reality. So then Ahmed Sheikh talks about the conflict of interest, because JAMA requires that you disclose if you have any conflict of interest. So if conflict of interest means, like, if you're going to publish research on unaliving yourself and you have a organization or an institute that treats or specifically advocates on this issue of unaliving yourself, then that's a very clear conflict of interest. You need to disclose that. Some of the authors were associated with Khalil Center. There needs to be disclosure of that. And then if you go, here's conflict of interest statement. Doesn't mention Khalil Center, doesn't mention Meristan of Rania Awaad. So this is shocking, unethical, dishonest. So anyway, you can read the details and look at this is Rania Awaad's pouting, whining, beyond statistics and rebuttals. The real question for me is what good will come from the massive confusion this thread has caused folks in our Muslim communities. Folks, this is the social justice warrior term, like, oh, the folks. Who uses that, like, as a shaykha or an imam? Like, the folks in the Muslim community already on the fence about mental health, and more specifically about the ever increasing rate of Muslim unaliving yourself. So Ahmed points out that where did she get ever increasing rate? So not only is the rate for Muslim unaliving yourself double, it's also increasing according to Rania. Just made it up. What research is there to back that it's actually increasing? So she plays the victim, or she plays the martyr, like, oh, I'm just trying to address this terrible problem, and then these troublemakers, these trolls, they come and they cause confusion and they bring doubt onto the amazing work that I'm doing. Can you believe it? So this is quite disgusting. Anyway, so definitely read this article, Working Towards Ihsan, and subscribe to the newsletter. He has a lot of good articles and research like this, investigation like this on, for example, Islamic Relief, the grift of Islamic Relief. If you've ever donated to Islamic Relief, stop donating to them. Maybe we'll go through some of that research at one point. But he looks at these different organizations that are collecting zakat in the millions of dollars and points out, well, how is that money actually being used? That's a question, right? Muslims should look into some of these organizations, and there needs to be transparency. So this is the big scandal, and Rania Awaad is still, enjoying her time in the Dawah Mafia. Look at this, like, Voice of America published this, featuring Rania Awaad. Do you know what Voice of America is? Voice of America is the U.S. government's media outlet. It's the state-owned news network. It's not like BBC. BBC is like funded, but it's not state-owned in the same way that Voice of America is. Voice of America is basically like a propaganda network, and like a global propaganda network, and they just push U.S. government propaganda, and they're featuring Rania Awaad's research. That says it all, really. And then here's Dr. Rania on the Yaqeen Institute website, and also visiting faculty at Yasser Qadi's Islamic Seminary of America, with a bunch of deformist reformists, the usual suspects. This is the Dawah Mafia, you have the guy who says that the best regime of human happiness is a regime that allows insult of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He supports that. You have Muhammad Majid, the government agent, CVE operative, Mujahid. Obviously, you have Imam Sandwich, and you have Yasser Qadi running this clown show. So that is the first part of our show, looking at this huge scandal and the lack of accountability. Now let's switch gears. Let's switch gears and look at what Rania Awaad is teaching when she gets invited to these masajid, and she is invited to give talks to the community, to girls and your mothers, your sisters, and your daughters. She's invited to speak to them, and what is she teaching them? Such a person with zero integrity. Even her Islamic teaching is completely shoddy, dishonest as well. And we're going to look at that right now. So give me a second to bring up the video. Okay. Now I'm ready. Inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in. I was asked to speak about the topic, better hidden? Question mark. This topic, the little blurb says, should women just be homemakers and stay out of the affairs of men and the domain of men, such as public life, formal education, specialized training, employment, financial independence, civic engagement, and so on? You probably have an understanding why they put me to talk about this topic. Alhamdulillah. All right, let's get right to it then. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
So I look at all the different topics. She's talking about civic engagement at all levels of the community. She gave an entire list. So that's what she's going to be talking about.
Where we'll start the conversation is where the assumption comes from. The very first thing I'm going to tell you, my dear sisters, is that always question assumptions. Where does the assumption that so many of, we hear this not just, by the way, it's not just from men. I hear this very often from women too. That a woman should stay at home. It's an assumption. Where does the assumption come from? That's the question. You see, when you say a woman's place is her home, it can mean a lot of different things. And this is what we're going to break down together. I have heard in scholarly circles, both men and women, try to use the verse of the Quran that talks about, does anyone know the verse? Thank you. وَقَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ. Now, those of you who've been attending the Friday night halakas, we're going over the text called Maharim al-Lisan, the prohibitions of the tongue. And just a few weeks ago, we talked about the prohibition of taking out of context verses of the Quran or Hadith. You see, the Quran was revealed in which it has multiple and heavy meanings. And even if you are a native Arabic speaker, you can't just open the Quran or even the body of Hadith and say, oh, I think it means this. Even if that's what seems like on the surface or seems like a literal explanation of the verse. You see, this ayah is ayah 33 in chapter 33 in Ahzab. And it starts out, وَقَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ. But it is right in the middle of a series of verses that come before it. See, context is everything. You have to understand
context.
Sabab al-Nuzul. Why was this ayah revealed? What was the sabab of its revelation, the reason for its revelation? There's a series of verses. And it starts out addressing the Prophet ﷺ and his wives. It's a series of verses that talk about, the point of it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to the wives of the Prophet ﷺ that you, wives, are the mothers of the believers. You have a special place in Islam. Thereby, you have special rules that belong only to you. Furthermore, you have a choice. If you wish the dunya and the embellishments of the dunya, the Prophet can free you, and you don't have to be his wife. But if you choose to be a wife of the Prophet ﷺ, you have special rules that apply to you. If you want Allah and His Messenger, these are the rules. And this وَقَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ is embedded right in the middle of these verses, because if you look even at verse 32, the verse right before it, and the verses prior to that too, they start out with يَا نِسَاءَ النَّبِيِّ, O wives of the Prophet. It's talking to specific people. And thereby, the rules are for a specific set of people, the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it says, لَسْتُنَّ كَأَحَدٍ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. You are not like any other woman. Now, sisters, when people take something
let's look at this
from the Quran and try to extrapolate it and apply it to everybody, you can see where the problem is.
Okay, let's just pause here and take stock of what she's saying. She's saying that, well, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, stay or abide in your homes. This is a command given to women. This is applying only to Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. This is for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the mothers of the believers. This is not generally applicable. Just look at the context. Just look at the context. So let's actually look at the context for 1 second. Let me bring this up. Ooh, you can't see the verse. This is annoying. What is this? Okay. Okay. I'll just read it. O wives of the Prophet, whoever of you should commit a clear immorality, for her the punishment would be double, twofold, and ever is that for Allah easy. And whoever of you devoutly obeys Allah and His Messenger and does righteousness, we will give her reward twice, and we have prepared for her a noble provision. O wives of the Prophet, you're not like anyone among women. If you fear Allah, then do not be soft in speech to men, lest he in whose heart is the disease should covet, but speak with appropriate speech. And abide in your houses, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ. And do not display yourselves as was the display of the former times of ignorance. So isn't it interesting how Rania Awaad and the other modernists, feminists, simp imams who give this analysis of the verse never read the entirety of the verse? They only say, they talk about the context. There's, so much context you have to keep in mind. But the context that they point out is everything before the ayah, before ayah 33. But they don't read ayah 33 fully. They just read the first part of it. And they say, well, this first part of it, just like the rest of the ayat prior to it, are specific to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they never read the rest of the ayah. But look, the rest of the ayah says, don't display yourselves. Don't display, tabarruj. Don't show your beauty and display yourselves like in the times of Jahiliyyah. So is that only for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is tabarruj and displaying yourselves like the times of Jahiliyyah? Muslim women in general can do that, but only the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot. How does that make any sense? Obviously, the rest of the ayah is applying to all women. So continue reading. And establish prayer and give zakat and obey Allah and His Messenger. Are those only specific to the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Only the wives of the Prophet have to establish the prayer and give zakat and obey Allah and His Messenger? It's only the wives? The rest of the Muslim women, they don't have to do these things? So this is the irony of her saying, we have to look at the context, guys. Make sure you look at the context. But you don't even read the rest of the verse. Because if you did read the rest of the verse, it would show that your interpretation is completely bogus. Why does the second part of the verse immediately following وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, why does that apply to only the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, but everything after, then it's more general. It's the general body of the Muslim community. So this is deception, right? This is deception. And we're going to get into another big contradiction, because if it's true that وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ is only for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's many examples of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaving their homes. They would leave. They would go to the masjid, for example, for salah, Isha and Fajr salah. They would obviously cover themselves completely, cover their face, cover their eyes, and they would be unrecognizable, and they'd be going in at night when there's no light. They didn't have street lamps, or they didn't have electricity, so it was completely dark, unrecognizable, and they would go to the masjid and pray in the back, completely in the dark. No one could see who's who. But they weren't in the homes. They left the home. They left their domiciles, and they went out. And on other occasions as well, they would leave the home completely in hijab. And this proves that this verse has general applicability. The verse is directed towards the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but those wives are models and an example for the entirety of the Muslim community. So when it says, do not be soft in speech to men, that's something for all Muslim women, not just for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, it's true. The wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are not like other women. There are special rules for them. For example, they can't remarry after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But so they're not like other women, but that doesn't mean that, well, the rules that apply to them are not applicable to Muslim women in general. This is a completely deficient, irrational conclusion or inference to make. So yeah, it's ridiculous. So I did a video on Noman Ali Khan as well, who talked about this verse and gives the same kind of bogus interpretation. It's just illogical. And you don't even have to be like an expert in tafsir or Arabic or Islamic studies. Just read what the verse says and listen to the distortion of these people in order to promote this kind of feminist perspective. So let's continue. I want to give more details, but if I talk for too much, then we're never going to get through the reaction.
Let me tell you, in case anyone's still feeling a little like, well, hold on, isn't it supposed to be that we understand these are the wives of the Prophet? What about the mothers of the believers who have very special rules even after the death of the Prophet ﷺ? There's certain things they can't do. They can't marry anyone else. They are there almost like an intensive training with the Prophet ﷺ to be the educators and teachers, because they are the ones who are living directly with him. And they become the teachers of our ummah, right? So somebody might say, but wait a second. We thought that this was something that people often say, a woman's place is her home, a woman's place. Where is it coming from? No.
It's coming from the verse. It's coming from the verse. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ. That's where it's coming from.
We have different ethnicities here. So let me try something out. I've heard with my own ears people who are, and I don't want to, and please don't be offended by this, but these are true statements that I've heard. I've heard some Moroccan people say, and very similar statement, by the way, by many of our Pakistani community, who will say something to the effect of, the woman only should leave her home twice. Have you heard this? She leaves her home, probably other ethnicities too, I'm sure. She leaves her home, her father's home, to her husband's home, and from her husband's home to the... So you know this statement. And you know it so well that you immediately quoted it. Or I can't do the Persian, subhanAllah.
Yeah, from the grave. So she goes from her father's home to her husband's home, and from their husband's home to the grave. So, this is such an evil, corrupt, un-Islamic statement from Pakistani and Somali culture, or whatever culture, other cultures she pointed to. Oh, this is so disgraceful. Look at the misogyny. It has nothing to do with Islam. This is how she wants to portray it. But let's think about the statement for a second.
Our Afghan sisters will say, and you have to help me with the wording here, that woman should either be home, kur, yeah, or what? Or in the grave. Kur. So you know the statement. Nonsense.
Nonsense.
Okay. What I was younger, I think I would have been a lot more careful and PC and careful with my wording. And I think after all the years of therapy that I've done and counseling with families and people, this is cultural nonsense.
Oh my God. Can you imagine such a person like counseling your family? Like if you're, a husband and you go to her for counseling for your marriage, yeah, expect divorce. Expect you're going to get really done over in divorce court. I feel sorry for those who go to her for counseling, but that's a very scary statement.
And it has caused so much pain and so much difficulty for so many people unnecessarily. And I'm not blaming just the men, because we women do this to ourselves too. And we do it to each other as women. And it is incredibly important to understand context, because context is everything. And I want to keep this conversation very balanced. Ansa Sosin, who was actually here last conference, if you remember her, mashallah, one of my very dear teachers, had this beautiful model. And I want to start with this, and I'll probably wrap up with it again at the end. She calls it the circles of concern. Your circles of priorities. Your circles of influence. Think of it as a circle, within a circle, within a circle, within a circle, concentric circles. And at the core, if you really want to know your priorities, the core is what? Is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nothing tops that, nobody. Now here's where people get confused. You see, there's a pre-marriage set of circles and there's a post-marriage set of circles. Because pre-marriage, the circle right after your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your relationship with your parents and your siblings, then comes your extended family, then comes your community, then comes the ummah, then comes all of humanity. Post-marriage, there is another circle for those who Allah has written for them to get married, which is not everyone. There's another circle that comes in, and it kind of elbows out the circles a little bit. And people get really confused at this one, because right after the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right at the core, once married, the next circle out is actually the spouse and the children. People go, oh, what about my parents? Well, listen, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it this way. In His eyes, Jalla Jalaluhu, and how He judges us, He puts and says, who is the only person who can be responsible for this circle? Earlier this week, I was doing a training for imams, and I said this exact same thing to them.
Anyway, it's getting long-winded, but these cultural statements, when they say, okay, from your father's home to your husband's home, from your husband's home to the grave, a woman should be either at home or in her grave. Like this is hyperbole. This is hyperbole. It doesn't mean literally. They're not saying that women cannot go out. Women cannot go outside of the home. Obviously, there are many reasons, legitimate reasons for a woman to leave the home. And maybe we need to stop here before she spews more of this garbage to clarify this issue. Because she's arguing a straw man, basically. She's arguing a straw man, this idea that, oh, well, these backwards cultural Muslims just want to lock the women up in the house and that's it. This is a misportrayal of traditional Islamic societies and traditional Islam. And it's known, like the most hardcore conservative Orthodox Muslims know that women can go out for legitimate reasons. And this is clear in the Sunnah. When we look at the wives of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabiyat, they would leave the house for legitimate reasons. I mentioned some of them, like going to the masjid, going to the mosque to pray. This is allowed according to the majority of the schools of thought. You also have Hajj. So you can't do Hajj in your home. You can't do Umrah in your home. You have to leave your home to do those things. So going for Eid prayers, for example, these are things that women can leave their house for. They can leave their house to visit family, their maharim, their kith and kin they can visit, keep good ties of kinship with them. They can go out for needs that they have. They can go out for even travel as long as they have a mahram with them. So that's leaving the house. She can move around in her own city or locality. Maybe she wants to go and buy something. Maybe she has a meeting. Maybe she has to take care of some kind of a business that she has. Maybe she has to take care of a family member or a friend that she has. Maybe she wants to go visit a sick person. Maybe she wants to go and do some charity. These are all legitimate things. But there are conditions, of course. She has to go with hijab, proper hijab. She has to avoid mixing with the opposite sex unnecessarily. She has to get permission from her husband or her father or her wali. These are the conditions. But she can, of course, she can go and do the things that she needs to do. Nowhere in Islam do we have this understanding that a woman is locked up in her house. This is not correct, and these are the Islamically legitimate needs, and there could be others that I didn't mention. And the proof, there's a lot of proof that shows this. If you're not familiar with the seerah and you don't know that the mothers of the believers, that they did go outside of their home for different purposes, let me give you some other proof. So in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, we have this report that Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "If the wife of any of you asks for permission to go to the mosque, do not stop her." Look at this hadith. If the wife of any of you asks for permission to go to the mosque, don't stop her. So what a lot of feminists will point out is like, oh, see this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling, oh, all women should just go to the masjid whenever they want. That's not what this hadith says. This hadith says she asked for permission. So what this proves is that the wife needs to ask for permission from her husband or her wali before leaving the house. She needs to ask explicitly for permission, or it's like tacit, like it's tacitly known that, okay, she regularly goes for this prayer, Isha prayer or Fajr prayer, or she regularly goes on Mondays to the grocery store or what have you. It's known, like tacitly, she doesn't have to ask every single time. It's just tacitly, he approves of it. It's not like he says, no, I do not want you going to this specific place, and then she deliberately disobeys him because I can do whatever I want. I'm a strong, independent woman. Like, that's not allowed in Islam. That's not allowed. It's not allowed for the wife, and this is a big problem for some of these Muslim women who haven't really been educated on the basics of Islam. But if you leave the house without your husband's permission, then this is a sinful thing. And I'm not saying that he has the right to harm you if you do that, but you have sinned. You have committed a sin against him because you have violated his rights, the right that he has over you. You don't have the right to tell him not to go out of the house, but he does have the right to tell you not to go out of the house. Now, it needs to be legitimate, of course. He can't just try to tyrannize you and say, yeah, you can't leave. You can't see your parents. You can't see your relatives. He can't forbid you from that. And so everything has to be in balance. But we have to understand the base ruling, the default ruling here. And the default ruling is that, yeah, all else being equal, stay in the house, because that's the primary form of hijab. That's the primary form of hijab for women, is the home itself. That is the main covering of women, is their home. And that's established in this ayah of the Quran that she was reading in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 33. So so there are conditions, right? So she goes to the masjid. There's another hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that's narrated in Sahih Muslim, that the Prophet said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if any of you women comes to the mosque, let her not wear perfume. So if you're going to the masjid and you're decking yourself out and you're displaying yourself like the times of ignorance in the masjid, this is a reason for your husband to say, or your father to say, yeah, no going to the masjid. You're not, being responsible about it. Like, if your purpose to go to the masjid is supposed to be for prayer, for ibadah, for worship, why are you making it into a fashion show? Why are you perfuming? Your perfume will attract attention. If you're suffering from, bad body odor, then don't go to the masjid that day. No problem. It's actually better for you to pray in your home, as other narrations will state. So, and then there's another proof here from the Sahabi Jabir ibn Abdullah. And he said, my maternal aunt got divorced and wanted to go and pick some fruit from her trees. And a man told her off, basically, for going out. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, and he said to her, never mind, go and pick fruit from your trees. Maybe you'll be able to give it to charity or do something good with it. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. So these are all proofs that, yeah, of course, a woman can, and this is what the ulama said unanimously. Yeah, a woman can leave her house for legitimate reasons and for these conditions that I mentioned. So Rania is arguing against a straw man. You know, the straw man is, and in all these countries, you know, you go to traditional Afghanistan, you go to the village, you go to traditional Pakistan, you go to the village, you go to traditional Iran or wherever. And yeah, women go out. They need to do certain things, but they observe hijab. They observe the hijab. They don't mix with men. And they abide by the other statements of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said that the middle of the path in like a roadway or a pathway is for men and the sides are for women. So even when you're going down the street, you separate. The men and the women shouldn't be in the middle of the road walking in front of everyone. They should try to keep to be more concealed at the side of the road. This is part of hijab. But feminists hate this. Feminists hate the sunnah. And they bristle at the idea that, oh, we would be on the side? We should be front and center. We should be in front of everyone. You know, I'm so amazing. I'm so strong and beautiful. I'm a queen. I'm going to slay. I have to be front and center of everything. That's their mentality. And Islam is saying, no, do not do this. Do not do this. And there's a fitna component. You are causing this kind of fitna, temptation, and this causes corruption. It causes problems in society. And we see the problems all around us in the modern world. This is not something that's even, esoteric. It's right in front of people's eyes. The amount of corruption, fornication, pornography, on and on. How many lives are being destroyed because of this fitna? Muslim and non-Muslim. So she's arguing a straw man. So let's see what else she's going to babble about. But I just want to clarify the actual ruling because some sisters are confused. Sisters might think that, oh, well, I better just stay locked up in my house at all times. Well, that can cause problems too. That can cause problems because sometimes you have obligations, you have to keep ties of kinship, you have to maybe help your parents, you have to, you have certain responsibilities that you need to take care of, especially if you have kids that require you going outside of your home. Is that allowed? Yes, if it's a legitimate reason that you have and you abide by hijab, you avoid mixing, you avoid, mixing with men and displaying yourself, you don't get into any kind of dangerous situation, going into dangerous areas, you get the permission of your husband. If you meet all of those conditions, then there's no problem. And this is not like a high bar. So let's get the Islamic ruling clear. And if you want more details, you can always go talk to a qualified imam. Don't go to Rania. Don't go to these feminist counselors. They're just going to obscure the ruling, confuse you, and ultimately take you down a path to destruction. So let's continue.
I say this model, by the way, to everybody. Imams, non-Muslims, here are your priorities, right? Right? Because it's a human thing, not just a woman's thing, not just a Muslim thing. And I said to the Imams, that next circle out after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your wife, and no one else can be her wife but you. Now, the opposite could be ostensibly different, not our conversation for today per se, and my guess is not many of you would want to be in that case. But your spouse is your spouse, and no one else can be your spouse, that person's spouse but you, which is why they're in the next circle.
And what about your parents? Like, your parents stop being relevant when you get married? Especially if you're a man. Like, if you're a man, you might be an only son or you might be the eldest son, or there might be some other reason that you have to take care of your parents. You have to take care of your father, your mother. If you have sisters, those are your kith and kin. That's your family. And they don't have another son. You're the only one. So why should your wife take priority over them in this circle model that she's presenting? This is not completely accurate. But when it comes to the wife, yeah, she does. See, this is the thing. There's not this complete parity or complete equality or mirror equality. There's differences in the rights and responsibilities of husband versus wife. But this is something that feminists bristle at, and they don't want to acknowledge it, so they create this kind of nonsense model.
Your kids, if you're blessed with them, biological children, you can only be the biological parent, mother or father of that child. No one else can be. Other people can parent and help, but no one else can be the biological parent, which is why that's there. And for siblings,
what do you mean that's
if you
there?
have them, the parent.
She just busted her whole model, because if they're all concentric circles, if the wife is the first, it's Allah, and then it's your wife, then where do the children fit? Where do the parents fit? If it's all together, that's just a jumble.
Parents, the responsibility on parents can be shared. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay.
No, I don't.
This is true, men and women. Men and women, which is why when we look.
Why did she say men and women? Men and women. Is this some kind of speech impediment? Like men and women. But if you notice, she keeps saying woman, woman. And actually, it was my wife who pointed this out, because we watched this together. And she was doing a lot of face palming as well. But my wife is Khalid. You might follow her on Facebook. And she writes a lot about being a Muslim wife, being a Muslim mom. So you can follow her on Facebook. And she also has some videos on the channel. But she has this great article that I recommend that you read. Let me just show it. Why is it so big? Understanding Why Women Belong in the Home. And she gives this very nice explanation about how women belong in the home. The home used to be a lovely, warm, productive, beautiful place. Nowadays, the home is mostly empty and still. There was once a time when the home was full and busy, the center of all facets of family life and the hub of all power, decisions, and actions. Well, you can read the rest of it. And, if you don't like my style of explaining these things, check out Khalid. Some people prefer her way of explaining things, and it's more palatable to their tastes or personality. So if you don't like me for some reason, you can always check out her explanation.
Look at the ayah we're looking at, وَقَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنَّ, the concept of, well, isn't it better to be at home? Islam says it is encouraged for both men and women. There is no difference.
Where Islam says it's encouraged for both men and women. Where? Dalil, please. Where's the dalil? قَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. Kunna, that's the feminine pronoun. You women. It's not you men and women. So where's your dalil for this?
The priority of your spouse and your children and your home is equal to men and women. No one else can be the husband other than him. No one else can be the father other than him.
Look at the conflation. Because the priority could be, like, let's grant her that, okay, the home, the wife and children, that's a priority. You have to take care of them. Let's just say that, put parents and other siblings to the side. Your family, this is your wife and kids. That's your number one priority after Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, fine, but you have to go outside of the home in order to serve your family, because where are you going to make ends meet? How are you going to earn a living to buy the food and pay for your living quarters, for your apartment or for your house, all the costs of living? Like, how are you going to provide if you're in the home? You have to go outside of the home. And that's a responsibility that only men have. Women don't have that responsibility. If women had that responsibility to provide, and Allah said, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, then that would be an issue, right? That would be difficult to reconcile. We have to stay in the home and we have to make ends meet. How can we do that? But this is why Allah didn't tell men to stay in the home. Allah didn't command men to stay in the home like the women. So she's just making stuff up. Just like she was making stuff up with her research about unaliving yourself. She just creates these this nonsense. She's doing the same with the Quran and with Islam. I mean, fear Allah, woman.
No one else could be the wife other than you, and no one else could be the mother other than you. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
Which is why the companions of the Prophet ﷺ understood this so well. So you look at someone like Abu Darda, one of the famous companions of the Prophet, and there's this beautiful saying that he says, "Ni'ma sawma'atul rajuli baytuh." The best monastery for a man is his home.
No, this doesn't mean that he should just stay at home. What's a monastery? What's the sanctuary for the man? Yeah, it's his home. That's where he can focus. That's where he can recharge himself. But that doesn't mean he has to stay in his home. Like there's not the same hijab component regarding modesty for men as there is for women. There's an inequality here between men and women, and she can't cope with that.
It's for men and for women, because the priority, as we showed in the circles, is for men and women.
Oh, the dalil is the circles. The circles is the proof. You know, as we saw in the circles, he needs to stay at home. But the thing, she just said that it's nonsense for women to stay at home. So she wants to take women out of the home and put men in the home. She wants to take women out of the home and say, nonsense. You should stay at home. This is nonsense. But guess what? The priority is for men to stay at home. Like, aren't you just contradicting your whole argument? If the circle of priority for women is also the home, then she should also stay in the home, as you denied in the first part of your talk. This is why people who are confused or they're dishonest, they just contradict themselves constantly. And we saw that with the Yasir Qadi debate as well. Like, the contradictions are just endless.
So this concept of be in your home and women should always be in their home. Let's look at the Mufassirun. Let's look at the scholars of Hadith. Now this is beautiful. Earlier we heard Ansani had recite, mashallah. And she recited in the house recitation. As you know, there are 10 different recitations of Quran. And there is a beauty in the fact that there is some differences and nuance. Most of them overlap, by the way, but there are some words and some differences between them. This verse is one of them. In the Hafs recitation, we read, وَقَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ, which translates into, again, talking to the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and settle or stay in your homes.
In Hafs, it's not قَرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ. بُيُوتِكُنْ. There's a dhamma. بُيُوتِكُنْ. And you have to, that's why I'm kind of careful, because you can easily say biyutikun, but that's a different qira'ah. So she's going to say qirna, like that's the variant that she's going to discuss, qarna versus qirna. But there is also a variant on buyutikun and biyutikun. Biyutikun with a kasra under the ba, versus buyutikun. But she's saying Hafs is biyutikun. That, I don't think that's correct. So an expert in qara can correct me. But when I looked it up, there's no, in Hafs it's not biyutikun, it's buyutikun.
But that's not how it's always recited, because in the scholars of the narrators of Kufa and Basra, they recite it as وَقِرْنَ فِي بِيُوتِكُنْ, with a kasra, وَقِرْنَ. Which changes the meaning. Not totally, but there is a different meaning. And there it means, and remain dignified. And remain dignified and serene in your homes.
Okay, how does this change anything from the point you're trying to make? It's still in your homes. Be dignified in your homes, like according to her translation. It's still in your homes, right? It's not like, oh, qirna actually means leave your homes whenever you want. Qirna means go be a boss babe, be a queen outside the home. That's not what it. So how is how is this different qira'ah supporting your overarching point?
So there are scholars, even in the recitations of the Quran and the tafsir, that said even for the Prophet's wives, there is a difference of meaning, let alone the rest of us.
There's a difference in meaning, but there's no difference in ruling. The ruling is the same. So this is someone who doesn't even understand fiqh. The ruling is the same. The default for women is, according to the verse, to be in their homes, and according to the sunnah. And then there are these, you have the default, and then you have other cases that are allowed. So the default is to be in your home. And then, as I explained, there are reasons that you can leave the house. An analogy to this is that, what's the default ruling on eating pork? What's the default ruling in Islam? It's haram. It's impermissible. You can't eat swine. Can you ever eat swine? Yes, you can. You can eat swine. There are exceptional circumstances that the Quran mentions when you're starving. You have no other recourse. You're going to die. It's life and death. And there's only a nice bacon sandwich there. If it's preventing you from death, then pork becomes halal. Or it might even become wajib. You have to eat it to survive. But that doesn't change the default ruling. That doesn't change the default ruling. The trick that these reformists play is that they look at the exceptions, the exceptional circumstances, and they pretend like that's the default. Like, what if I came and told you that, did you know all of these scholars, these cultural Muslims, these cultural and backwards Muslims who say that pork is haram, they don't know what they're talking about. You can eat pork. You can in Islam. Did you know that? Yes. And here, this imam has said it. You can eat pork. So there, I proved it. Look at the concentric circles. It's a proof. So we would say that that person is dishonest. You are presenting an exceptional circumstance or a conditional circumstance and presenting it as if it's the default, as if it's unqualified. To eat pork, there has to be a reason. There has to be a condition. There is a qualification to that permission to eat the pork. The default is that it's haram. Same when it comes for women in the home. The default is that she's at home. And then to leave the home, there are conditions for that. There are qualifications for that. This is the distortion that many of the modernists will make. And it's dishonest. It's low IQ. It shows a lack of intelligence and a lack of character, because you are distorting the tradition.
And so then the scholars of tafsir come and say, you have the very famous Imam Tabari, who says that because of this difference of meaning, and even in the original, in the Hafs recitation of the word, whether it's qarna or qirna, they have both said that this means that it is an encouragement but not an obligation. Likewise, Ibn Battal said that this is not an obligation, but an encouragement.
What do you mean obligation? Because all of the scholars have said that there are reasons to leave the house. There are reasons to leave the house. Legitimate reasons. So no one says that you're obligated to stay in the house regardless. So what is she proving here? This is the confusion. So an encouragement, they're encouraging. So again, this contradicts her interpretation of the verse earlier, because she said that, no, this only applies to the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's specific for them to stay in the home. Now she's saying that these scholars, like Imam al-Tabari, he's saying that this verse means it's encouraged to stay in the home, but it's not obligatory. This contradicts what you just said. At the whole beginning of your presentation was to make a big stink that, we have to read the verse in context. And then when we read the context, we realize that qarna fi buyutikun is only for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not applicable to just women in general. So contradiction after contradiction after contradiction.
You have another, Ibn Hajar. These are all mufassirun, all scholars of tafsir, exegesis of the Quran.
Ibn Hajar?
And he says the same thing, it's not compulsory.
Scholar of hadith.
So where do you get people on the minbar in the khutbahs, because I've heard it in a khutbah, and stay in your homes, right? Stay hidden. It is better. It's better for men and women.
It's better. No, it's not better for men and women. It's better for women. Men need to be modest. They need to observe modesty, haya. And we read about the Sahaba, some of which had very high degrees of haya, like Uthman, radiallahu anhu. He had a very high degree of haya and shyness and modesty. But the requirement for modesty and the modality of modesty is not the same for men and women. Stop equating the genders. Stop with this feminist nonsense. The steps that women have to take in order to be modest is much greater. It's much greater of a responsibility than for men. Why? Because men are not beautiful like women. Men do not have the beauty and the attractiveness that women have. Men do not have the ornaments that women have. Women have been created as this very beautiful creation of Allah, very attractive. And men are visually attracted to these aspects of women. So men don't have the same kind of attractiveness. We don't have the same ornaments that women have. So we have less of a responsibility to cover. We have more of a responsibility to lower the gaze, for example, and more of a responsibility to manage our women folk. Now I'm using the word folk, but to manage, to protect our women. That is more of a responsibility that we have. But in terms of covering and being modest and being hidden, then women have more of that responsibility. There is not equality. There is not equality.
What is this thing, this fascination about it's better for women? Because if everybody knew their priorities, everybody would be spending more time at home. Right?
How can we spend more time at home when we are responsible for providing for the family?
And then we don't have these very odd questions about, like, should a woman get married or educated? What? Why is this an either-or question? Why?
Do you really not understand the conflict between marriage and education? Are you living under a rock that you don't understand that if you're going and pursuing education, then that will take away from being able to get married and settle down and have children? And you have so many, as a sociological reality, so many Muslim women who are delaying their marriage because they want to get a degree. So where is she? Like, is she not in the real world?
Either or question. Because that's not the tradition of Islam. That's cultural nonsense. MashaAllah. That's not the tradition of our noble predecessors, not of the women, not the Prophet's wives, our mothers of the believers.
The Prophet's wives, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and radiallahu anhun, and all of these noble predecessors, they were going to college. These women were all going to college, and that's our tradition.
And certainly not of the Sahabiyat. You want stories
of
the Sahabiyat?
They were just going enrolling at the 4-year universities.
Because you see what happens when we rely on knowledge of our deen. See what happens if a woman stays at home. I love this. One of the scholars said, if the woman really is forced to be home, then she's not able to engage in society, learn, and trade, and finance, and figure out knowledge, and go and seek, and come, and travel. All the benefits of that are taken away. So you know what happens instead? Literally taken in the book, it says, she becomes petty. If you are not living a purposeful life, something with purpose and meaning to it, then life is just a chore, the chores of life, and it becomes petty.
Like, look at this bourgeois mindset. Like, if you're just concerned with the chores of life, you need to travel, and you need to seek knowledge, and you need to go out, and you need to go to finance and college and civil duty, and she talks about all of this. Then you're gonna live a petty life. Like, what kind of privileged bourgeois life are you living? Actually, like, what about the men? Actually, what about your husband, who he has to worry about making rent for that month, paying the electric bill, the water bill. He has to pay medical bills, maybe. He has to worry about where the money for the groceries are coming from for that month. He has to deal with the bill collector, the tax collector. He has to file his taxes if he's in the United States. All of these responsibilities that are on his back. And is that a petty existence that he has? He doesn't have a choice. He has to provide all of that. And meanwhile, you're sitting there as the wife. Oh, boy, where can I go travel? Oh, what kind of deen intensive can I take next? And what kind of, like, okay, where can I, I need to go out and I need to go and work. And like, Islam gives you, the woman, the luxury of not having to work. Islam gives you the luxury of not having to have that kind of burden and that responsibility. But that doesn't mean you have no responsibility. You have responsibilities as well. They're just not to the same degree as a man's responsibility. The man's responsibility is greater. The man's responsibility is greater, and that's a greater burden that he has. But because he shoulders that greater burden, he also has been given certain rights and certain privileges that women have, his wives have not gotten, it's not been legislated by Allah, the lawgiver. So, but these chores, if you have to, be responsible for cooking and cleaning and changing the diapers and taking care of the baby, then your life is petty. Like, you'll become a petty person. You'll become a small-minded person. Look at the kind of materialistic understanding she has. Speaking about wives and household duties, there's this book that has been published recently. Everything is mirrored. So, Views on Womanhood. And this is a translation of the work of Mustafa Sabri Effendi, who is a scholar, a Turkish scholar from the Ottoman Empire. He was one of the last muftis of the Ottoman Caliphate. And this has been translated very beautifully. And I want to do like a whole episode or half an episode on this book and give a review. It's responding to a lot of modernist claims and feminist claims. And this is from, the 19th century, basically. But this is a valuable work. Buy it. I'll talk about it if you want to know more details about, well, what does the tradition of Islam have to say about women's responsibilities domestically? And there's this feminist narrative that, Islam didn't put any responsibilities on domestic chores on the woman and on the mother and the wife. This is false. This is a feminist distortion. Yes, of course you have responsibilities. Are you not familiar with the daughter of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima, radiallahu anha? What was she doing in the house of Ali? Was Ali in the house, radiallahu anhu? No, he was outside the house making ends meet, and she was in the house kneading dough and cleaning and cooking, taking care of the children. So that was what the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing. But you're too good for that. Like, your existence is petty if you limit your life to the domestic domain. So that's the thing about these feminists. What they say, they claim, our pious predecessors and our sahabiyat, and stupid cultural nonsense has destroyed the beautiful example of the sahabiyat. Okay. Are you going to talk about the beautiful example of Fatima, of Aisha, of Hafsa, of the other wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the other sahabiyat? No, she's not going to talk about that.
The conversations become petty. The conversations about what she wore and who got what purse and what shoes and what car and whose kid went to what school, and it starts to become very petty. Or even worse. Yeah, I think that person on that show should have married that person, and that person, can you imagine this and happened and that happened and this happened, and no, that bachelor should have married this. I would have been that like garbage.
Yeah, that kind of talk is the product of going out of the house. That kind of gossipy talk is a product of going outside of the house. And even if it weren't, a lot of the women who go to the colleges, are working in these high professions, they're still gossipy. That has nothing to do whether if the woman is outside the home or inside of the home. That's just women's nature and personality. It has nothing to do with what she's talking about.
I walked into a conversation like this the other day, and I was like, petty, not purposeful. And yes, maybe you call me harsh, fine. But it's petty. It's pettiness. What are you spending your time actually doing? I didn't ask you to be a scholar of Islam. But with the focus, men and women, of leading a purposeful life, there's no time for this nonsense. MashaAllah. Right? Look, if you want, let's now that we kind of question that assumption of that ayah, about whether women should be home and hidden. Okay? Now let's look at proof. Proof from the Sahabiyat. Let's look at directly at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because sometimes when we talk about modern cases, they're like, but what about the Prophet's time? Okay, let's talk about the Prophet's time. Let's talk about one of my favorite, I don't have a lot of favorite stories, but I love the story of Khawla. Khawla bint Tha'laba. Do you remember the story of Khawla? I love the story of Khawla. So, Khawla bint Tha'laba is a very important companion, Sahabiyya of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the story I'm going to tell you here takes place as she's an older woman, and it's at the time of the Khalifa Sayyidina Umar. Okay? And she walks up to Sayyidina Umar, who's walking through with his companions, you know, the Khalifa, the Caliph of the Muslims, and she stops him. He's on his way for another meeting, and she stops him. And so he sees her, and he goes to her and talks to her. And she tells him it's beautiful. She says, oh, Umar, can you imagine like an auntie, like an elderly auntie? And she tells, now this is the Khalifa, okay, Umar, out of all people, okay? And she says to him, I remember you when you were just a Umayd. You were just little Umar, mashallah, in the marketplace of Al-Qaz. And I remember when you were just herding your sheep with a stick. You know how aunties do this? They totally embarrass you, right? Mashallah. Okay, here's you're some important person and they're totally embarrassing you. Mashallah. And then she says to him something very heavy. She says, fear Allah in your role as Khalifa and taking care of people. And know that if you fear the threat of punishment in the hereafter, you'll realize that the hereafter is not that far away. And if you fear death, then know you're going to miss opportunities in this life. And you focus on the present and be careful with that responsibility of the people that you're in charge of. So she's giving him this advice, but this is the Khalifa Umar. So his companion says to him, you left and you got late for the meeting with a man to talk to this old woman? That's what he said. That's literally what he said. So Umar says to him, whoa! He literally goes, whoa to you. Do you know who this is? This is Khawla bint Tha'laba. This is the woman who, if she were to speak to me all day long, I would stand there. Unless it was a prayer time, I'd go and I'd come back and keep listening to her. Because who am I not to listen to her when Allah listened to her from the seventh heavens? And because of her complaint to Allah, Allah revealed verses in the Quran. What am I referring to? Surah Al-Mujad. Qad sami'a. Allah has heard the one who complains to you about her husband. In the Quran. This went earlier in life, she had went to the Prophet ﷺ because her husband had tried to divorce her and mistreat her. And she complained to the Prophet ﷺ, and long story short, is that at the time, the Prophet can't speak of his own desire, he has to use, right, revelation. He said, I don't have an answer yet, and Allah sent the revelation to answer her question. So here's Allah saying, who am I not to listen to her when Allah has listened to her from the seven heavens and revealed verses? They had no problem walking up to the caliphs. They had no problem going to the Prophet ﷺ asking questions. Look.
Now this is a distortion, as usual, a distortion. So she takes that one case and she does qiyas, basically. She makes an analogy and she says that, well, this means that women in general, they can just go out and talk to men in authority and go and confront them and address them. She's kind of making this ruling and declaring it and announcing it. And we have to ask these types of people, like, do you not fear Allah? Like, how dare you speak in this kind of casual way and present these rulings based on what? Like, this is your ijtihad, like you're deriving this ruling based on this one story. And if you had looked more carefully at the details, you pointed out yourself that she was an elderly woman. She was older. And we know that the requirements for hijab and covering are not as strict when it comes to older women. And this is mentioned explicitly in the Quran, in Surah Nur of the Quran, so verse 60, We read, and as for women past childbearing who do not expect wedlock, it is no sin on them if they discard their outer clothing in such a way as not to show their adornment, but to refrain is better for them. So this is a kind of dispensation or leeway that is given for older women because there's not the same kind of degree of fitna or temptation when it comes to older women. They are past menopause. They're not, planning on being, they're past childbearing age, as the verse mentions. So this is Khawla is not an average, she's not a young woman. She's not the average. This is a very unique and specific case. So a real scholar, a real mujtahid, a real faqih is not going to take one story and then come with this very broad ruling based on this one story. He's going to take in all of the evidence according to usul al-fiqh and arrive at the hukm, arrive at the ruling. And there's no reason for us to do that because already the ulama of history have done this, the fuqaha have done this, and there's consensus or near consensus on all of these points with slight variations. But none of that looks anything close to what this modernist feminist is spewing. So even the story that she's giving refutes herself.
Another example quickly. Darda, who overheard one time the Khalifa, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, all right? And in the nighttime, he was looking for his servant, his helper. And so he calls out to him, the servant didn't answer. Maybe he was sleeping. So he curses him. And she hears this. In the morning, she says to him, "O Caliph, I heard you curse your servant." So they check them. They don't just question and ask and go up to, they even check them. Right? If women weren't out and about and part of the system and part of the society and part of the education and part of the learning, how do you get stories like this? So here,
again, this is the straw man. Who said that women aren't a part of society? Who said that women are not involved in society? This is her straw man. No one claimed this. No one claimed that Muslim women are not a part of Islamic society. What the Islamic tradition or what the Quran and the Sunnah require is that women are hidden. Women are concealed through hijab visually. But that doesn't mean that they can't hear something or they can't say something or they cannot have an influence. That can still exist. Okay, it's not going to be the same kind of influence as men. There's no equality there. But this kind of straw man that the traditional position is that women are completely invisible and they cannot neither see nor speak. They can't be seen nor heard. This is just a straw man that she's arguing against. All of these examples are not problematic for the traditional position. Like this is not a contradiction of qarna fi buyutikun. So it's like this is fallacious reasoning on her part.
Is Darda saying to the Khalifa Abdul Malik, saying to him, have you not heard of the Prophet ﷺ's hadith where he says, those who curse others shall not be accepted as intercessors or witnesses on the Day of Judgment?
Also, Darda was also elderly at this point. So that's, again, it's not a young woman who's going straight to the caliph and telling him off. Like, she's older and she's one of the very respected sahabiyat, not just an average person or an average girl or woman.
This is wrong. Now, for my activist sisters out there, this is what you call truth to power. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Girl boss.
This is really important that we start to understand who our noble predecessors were. So when people start to say, no, sister, no, young person, get married, stay at home. The issue isn't about marriage or about staying home, because we all need to stay at home. The issue is about integrating and understanding and educating yourself about the deen. That if you have questions, the woman Sahabiya would hear something, and if they weren't sure, that they'd go up to the Prophet ﷺ themselves. They asked the Prophet ﷺ for their own day of learning just with him. But they would also be at the general learning circles with the men and the women.
Look how she had to contradict herself immediately. Oh, they asked for their own day. to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ask him questions. Oh, but also they were at all of the other meetings too with the men. Obviously, of course. Which is it? Like, if they were at all of the same gatherings with the men, then why would they need their own separate day? The fact that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam segregated the men and the women, and he was with the men more often in terms of teaching, and also ghazawat and battles, the fact that he was more with them, that necessitated a separate day for women specifically. But if she acknowledges that, she wants to acknowledge that, yes, the women had their separate day because they're so special, but also they were at all of the other gatherings because there's no segregation and no separation. So anyway.
And at the prayers. Because we have several narrations where it says, and I was praying in the first line of the women right after the men. Like, you know that they were there. Look, I'm going to share with you one more person. I just love her, mashallah.
No one denied
too many people in the stories, but her that I love. Her name is Shifa. Shifa al-Adawiyya. Now, a little later, we're going to talk, as I close up, we're going to talk about financial literacy and financial independence, because this comes up as a question too. You tell me how in counseling, literally in counseling today, there are women who I'll ask them that there's tensions in the marriage and the issues and financial issues, and I'll say, do you have access to your own account? It's a joint account. Do you have access to the account? No. You don't know how much is in your joint account? No. You don't have a way for it? No. Everything is blocked off. And like, there is a real problem, an issue when women don't have financial literacy. This is something Allah has given you, and as Muslims on a silver platter from the first day of Islam. Why do we let our cultures take it away from us? Oh, that's what they do back home. No. Garbage, nonsense. It's not Islam. How do you have Shifa al-Adawiyya?
I mean, she's correct. Like, if you have your wealth or your money as a Muslim woman, that is your money and you should control it as long as you're of age. That's your money, you should control it. And it's better if you retain control of that, because it just prevents complications or misunderstanding. But at the same time, his money is his money. So his accounts should be separate and he should control his money. What feminists will often say, and she didn't necessarily say it in this lecture, but they'll say that no. Any account that he has as a man has to be a joint account shared with his wife. And this is wrong. The accounts should be separate. And this is actually the traditional ruling or the traditional teaching of many scholars who also give practical marriage advice, even in the modern day. And they'll say, make sure to keep your accounts separate. And so it's very clear who owns what.
Speaking of Sayyidina Umar, in the Khalifa of Sayyidina Umar, he appoints the first minister of finance of Islam. The very first minister of finance of Islam is a woman. And her name is Shifa al-Adawiyya. Shifa is actually a nickname. Her name is Layla, originally Layla al-Adawiyya. And they nicknamed her Shifa. And she was given the role of all of the finances of the market. Now, when I say the market, do you understand what this means? You have to be able to go into the market. You're dealing with men and with women, you're dealing with money, and you're dealing with debts and bankruptcy, and then she had this role that if anybody didn't know the rules, get this, the rules of trade and finance in Islamic fiqh al-mu'amalat, the fiqh of transactions, in the section of the financial, we would, as fiqh students, we would call this chapter the headache chapter. Because there's so many complicated rules that wallahi yani, mashallah.
She studied fiqh. That's a surprise. But also, where is the narrations? Like, financial minister? Like, what's the Arabic for that? What's describing her, Shifa as being a financial minister? This is why I'd like to know. Because when you actually read some of these reports, they will mention that, she carried a stick or she carried a whip in the marketplace. And what we call that today is religious police. She was basically the religious police. If women are not covered properly, then they get a little reminder that, hey, you need to cover yourself. This is the religious police in the marketplace. If you are a minister of finance and they'll like give this title, oh, she was the chief financial officer of the caliph. Like these modern terms, they apply to make it seem like she's this boss woman, this queen, but it's just this projection. This is not actually in the text. And you see this claim repeated over and over and over again. Yes, Queen Simstitute also puts out this claim to promote, boss babes and women's empowerment. And you should know how I feel about women's empowerment. Check out the debate I had with a feminist who brings up these same tired examples of the Sahabiyat supposedly being boss babes and queens in the marketplace, and all of these cherry-picked and distorted examples. Watch that debate, and I explained the problem with empowerment. Women's empowerment is something very destructive, and I present the Islamic reasoning for that, the secular reasoning for that. Check out that debate.
And so here, the most faqih, the most knowledgeable of this topic of finances was a woman. And he appoints her this role. And it said she would go into the market, and if she saw anybody who didn't know, men or women.
Who said she was the most knowledgeable of finances at that time? She's just making up claims. Like, what is the proof for that? Never have seen any citation. She was the most knowledgeable about the fiqh of mu'amalat and contracts and agreements and oaths and all this. Where's the proof of that?
Who didn't know the rules well, or was trying to scam somebody, or was trying to, cheat, or just didn't know the rules, she'd kick them out of the market. And under her leadership, the finances, the treasury of the Muslims expanded greatly. Now, is someone going to question the wisdom?
So she's monitoring the marketplace, and she's also like looking at Baitul Mal, and she's also, coordinating these expeditions and conquest of lands and territories, and because she was the finance minister, apparently. So where is this coming from? This is all made up. Like, just by monitoring the market, even if we took her interpretation, her modernist gloss on it, that the texts don't actually support, how does that make her she's overseeing, the most wealth increase? This is such a feminist nonsense.
That he puts a woman in this role and puts a woman in the marketplace and knows who's best suited for the job.
Yeah, religious police, specifically to monitor women, making sure that they're covered properly when they are going out for their needs. That's what it is. And how would a elderly woman, because she was older, go, and there are men who are arguing, and some of these men, you don't know where they're from. Maybe they're coming from, they've traveled hundreds of miles, or maybe they're Bedouins and they're coming to trade, and maybe they don't even know who this person is, and they want to cheat or they want to do something wrong, and then they're going to obey the authority of a woman coming to them and telling them, hey, this is wrong. It doesn't even make sense. Like, try to imagine it. Like, this is not in touch with the sociological reality of Muslim societies or any of these kind of pre-modern societies. It's just projecting like this kind of modernist business. You have the marketplace, like she's imagining the New York Stock Exchange, and you have men and you have women there, and you have HR department, and you have like that's what she's imagining 1400 years ago or 1300 years ago. This is not academic. It's not connected to any kind of tradition. She's not providing any text to justify these claims that she's making.
Yet we can't even get women on our masjid boards, let alone be the treasurer of the boards. Okay. Now,
that's a
somebody
disaster.
could say, okay, you started the
Putting
ayah about
women on
Qadr
these boards is a
and
disaster.
the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does that just mean that they're home? I want to clarify this point in case anyone was confused by it. We don't have time to go into all the different wives of the Prophet, but let's just say one. Let's use one, maybe one that we don't speak of frequently, Salama. Okay? You have Salama, for example, who we know not only was she present in a lot of everyday matters, but the wives were also present in the battles. They didn't just stay home. They were always part and parcel of the Muslim society. And so Salama, one time there's a story about her where she's doing her hair, and they hear the call out for the Prophet calling out for people to come and listen. And so she says to her helper, she says, I'm going to go. And the helper says, no, he's calling the men. He says, no. She said, no. The call said, all people. I'm a person. I'm going out to see what the Prophet said. And so she goes out and she listens, and the Prophet ﷺ that day was talking about the hawd, the pool, right? And later, what's interesting about the Prophet's wives, alayhi salam, is that Ridwanullahi alayhin, is that they would learn the same lesson that the Prophet said publicly later in their homes. Like he would give them their personal lesson. Remember, he was training them to become our teachers. So she was going to hear this again later, but she wanted to be out there in the fabric of society. There are other narrations that talk about in the battles, you could see the wife.
Yeah, was this prior to the revelation of hijab and the command of hijab? A lot of these examples that these feminists will point out, they'll point out to examples prior to the revelation of hijab. And they'll say, oh, see, this is women are going out and they want to be out in front. This is... And there's so many examples that contradict this, like with Salama and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where the Muslims were prevented from going into Mecca by the Quraysh. And then the Prophet ﷺ got advice from Salama, who was with him. And he asked her privately, or he consulted with her privately, and she gave, the advice that the Prophet ﷺ go and shave his head, basically, without going into the full details of the story and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. But the point is that Salama wasn't out in front with the men, and she was just giving this advice, and why don't you just shave your head? She was concealed, and it was a private situation. So many examples contradict these cherry-picked. You don't even know where it's coming from, and you don't know that this is completely detached from any kind of academic discussion of the hijab and the sahabiyat and ummahat al-mu'mineen.
So the Prophet ﷺ skirt back and forth, trying to give people water and help people and remedy people. And even Shifa, the reason she got her nickname Shifa, the one about the finances, not her wife, one of the companions, sahabiyat, is because she was actually also on the battlefield helping medicate. So she got the nickname because she was very specialized in being able to treat sores. Right, polymaths, mashallah. And think about Salama too. In another instance, when the Prophet ﷺ...
The warfare, this is well known that when it comes to war, especially when the Muslims are being attacked and it's defensive, then it's all hands on deck. And sometimes you'll need, it's an existential threat to the Muslim community. Sometimes you'll need women to step in and help. In those exceptional circumstances, then it's allowed for women to come out and into battle. Otherwise, women don't go to battle. All of these ghazawat that the Prophet ﷺ went in with the Sahaba, they didn't, the women weren't coming along in battle. This is unheard of. But she is presenting exceptional circumstances as if that's the default. This is a distortion.
Was trying to enter Mecca the first time and was stopped. And he wanted to tell all his companions we need to turn back, and nobody wanted to listen. Who did he ask advice from? Salama, his wife. He said, I don't know what to do. And she said, why don't you shave your hair first, indicating it's done, and then they will follow you and shave their hair, and everyone can leave. Now, how would he have asked her advice if she wasn't there?
She was there concealed. They had their own kind of hawdaj, or this kind of compartment that was harnessed to the camels, for example. And so women were concealed. They weren't like in the midst of men mixing with them. So what is she talking about? Like, this is something, complete distortion.
You understand what I'm trying to say? It is really important to understand the context and to question the assumptions about what does it mean a woman should be home. Now, we talked about priorities. Where I'm going to end, my sisters, inshallah, is really thinking about things like education. I said before, why is it an either or between education and between our religion, between marriage, between having children. There's a balance. Here's the balance. There should be not some false Islamic pretext that people say, oh, but Islam says it would be better for you to be a mother. I saw my teachers balance beautifully whatever Allah gave them. Some women, Allah gave them marriage, some didn't. And from those who were married, some Allah gave them children, some didn't. But whatever Allah gives you, there's a perfect balance to the best of your ability. But you know what that means? You know what happens in our societies? We have extremes. People push to education. And so you have women who are told, prioritize your education, prioritize your job, prioritize climbing up that corporate ladder, to the neglect of potentially getting married and forming a family, if it's even written for her.
Isn't that what you just did in this talk? You said that having this domestic life, it makes you a petty person, makes you small-minded. Like, that was your whole message. So, and the examples you didn't give any examples of sahabiyat who were at home cooking and cleaning for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though that was the default, and there are so many narrations regarding that. You didn't mention a single one. So you're part of the problem. You're the one who's encouraging, go out, go and do big things, go do great things. Like, this is poison.
Then you have the other extreme of, no, forget higher education, you'll never get married and have children. The extremes. Both are extremes. And then we have members of our society that want it all. We have family members and aunties of ours who want everything. They want you to be the superwoman.
Isn't that that's what you're claiming? You're saying that there is no contradiction between education and family. Getting married and having a family, and then being educated and pursuing that kind of career. You're the one who's saying that there's no contradiction, meaning you can do both, you can have it all. I'm the one who's telling all of our listeners here that no, these are mutually exclusive. Like, if you go and pursue an education and a career, then you have to pay a heavy price for that. You have to pay a heavy price where you do have to sacrifice marriage. You have to get married later, or you can't put a priority on your husband, on making a house a home, on having children. You can't really prioritize that. The thing is, everyone has a limited amount of time. They have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources. As a woman, and Khalid teaches this in the course that Alesna, that is great course and has saved many marriages. They write testimonials. We took the course with Khalid, Wife School, and it saved our marriage. So if you really want to understand this whole feminist issue and what it means to be a traditional Muslim mom and wife, then take Khalid's Wife School at alesna.org. You won't regret it. But what Khalid will explain is that, well, you have a limited window for having children. Typically, women cannot have children past the age of 35, or there's, severe or potential health consequences for getting pregnant and having children after 35, 36, 37. So that's a limited window. If you want to have children and you want to have big families, and the Prophet ﷺ encourages having many children, so he'll be proud of the ummah on the Day of Judgment, then you have to get married earlier so that you can start having children earlier. If you get married at age 30, then you're not going to be able to have many children. You're not going to build that big family that you will enjoy, that your whole kith and kin will enjoy. You're going to be limited. So you're prioritizing, when you go this education/career route, it comes at a big cost. What is worth that? What is worth paying the price of family and a happy marriage? These feminists like Rania Awaad don't address this reality. They pretend like these trade-offs don't exist.
When you really need them, where are they? I don't usually disclose a lot, but I'll share this one piece of my own life. My family told me, we can see that you can do higher education, but you're going to get married too. And so while you're doing this, we're going to figure this out in parallel. And when you do that, you need to show up. And they showed up, tabarakallah. People come up to me all the time and say, how did you do this? And I say, I didn't do anything. There were a lot of people whose hands were in the pot, allowing for this to happen. My eldest sister with us, may Allah bless her, inshallah, will tell you that there are a lot of hands in raising the children. SubhanAllah, that there are a lot of hands helping out. Because if you're going to push forward somebody to join and be in leadership and be in education, then in traditional societies, it said that there were at least 4 hands for every child that was born. 4 different pairs of hands that could help out.
Yeah, so this is a misconception. Okay, there are 4 hands that are helping out. So these are other women who are helping out. And if they're helping out, they're taking out time from their lives to help out with your family, while you are out there pursuing leadership and your PhD and your career and whatever. When are you going to give back? You have to also contribute. Like in traditional societies, everything is mutual. So if they're helping you, you're helping them. So not only are they helping you raise your children, you're helping them raise their children. So it's not like you're magically getting some kind of extra bonus time for free in these traditional societies because, oh, everyone else is helping out. You also have to contribute. You also have to help out with their lives. So this kind of nonsense is the word of the day from this kind of misinterpretation or misunderstanding of what traditional societies are. Traditional societies weren't pushing their daughters to go be PhDs or to be leaders. That's not what we see in traditional societies. If you go to traditional Muslim societies or even non-Muslim societies, their women are focusing on being mothers. And that's why they have such high birth rates. The average family size is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 children. And if you go to our grandparents' generation, that was the average family size. No less than 3, no less than 4. Now, obviously, some people might have fertility issues, but we're talking about the norm. You can't have that if you're pushing your daughters to go and be PhDs and be leaders, as Rania Awaad is doing. So what she's advocating is the destruction of traditional Muslim society.
Our nuclear family type societies that we have here, especially in the West, there's some research that says it is the nuclear family that is actually one of the reasons for the amount of child abuse and neglect that we have.
Yeah, so your advice is creating those nuclear families. Your advice is creating those nuclear families because if you're going and pursuing the education, you just cannot have as many children. So that means you have a smaller family. And also when you pursue your education or a PhD or leadership, that requires you to travel. You're not going to be in the same city as your family, oftentimes because you have different opportunities, especially if you go into some of these competitive fields. So you have to move. That's what creates the nuclear families.
There is something to be said about multiple hands helping out. And if you're going to push your kid towards education, you better be there when they need your help for kids too, right? Just saying, mashallah.
Yeah, you help with when you're older and you've already had your fun, you had your degrees and your career, and then when you're older, you're helping out. But who is helping out when you have your children? It's not just your mother. What if your mother is not alive? Who's going to help? Who's helping with the burden of children if it's not you, like you're outside doing your PhD or your higher education or whatever?
And if they are not educated, then we deal with people believing weird cultural misconceptions like what we have here. I talked already about financial independence and how it's important that we have this, and I'll just ask you this. Last conference I spoke about Khadija, radiallahu anha.
No.
How do you have Khadija having an entire business, incredibly wealthy, unless she had financial literacy?
Yeah, it's not that difficult. Her wealth was inherited from her previous husbands who had passed away, and it's not that. And I'm sure she had other male family relatives who were helping her, just like a man would. Like if I suddenly came into a lot of wealth, I would definitely consult with people. How do I manage this? I don't need to go to business school. I don't need to go and get a degree in finances to be able to figure that out. So financial literacy, that doesn't require leaving the house, or it doesn't contradict any traditional understanding of gender roles.
How do you have a shifa that we were talking about today being the minister of finances unless this was something already part of what the woman did of Islamic societies?
She was the minister.
Lastly, civic engagement. And this is what
there you go,
serving
another.
Your communities. If the circles of priorities, I said I'll end with this inshallah, and so here we're back with it. If the circles of community mean that your core, which is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is solid, and your family is in a good place, then of course, by all means, part of charity isn't just money that we give. Charity in Islam is also our time. It is our knowledge. It is our effort. That is charity. When you tutor somebody with the knowledge you have, that's a form of charity. It doesn't have to be dollars in a box.
You can tutor someone at home. You can tutor someone at home. So what is she driving at?
When you volunteer of the time, you say, I don't know a lot, but I have time to help, right? There's a pantry back here, mashallah, in this masjid, and other things happen. You give your time, you give your time. That's a form of charity, even if you didn't pay anything out of the pocket because you didn't have much. All of these are forms of charity and forms of civic engagement. When you take the woman out of that, or you go to the other extreme of what we call the social justice warriors, right? You end up with what? You end up with people, and I'm going to use this example because I have people in my life who love dolphins, beautiful, majestic creatures, but they're all about save the dolphins, and their house is a wreck. Save the dolphins, and for the younger people, your room is a mess. This is a lack of understanding our priorities. It can't be one extreme or the other, mashallah. And lastly, our yardstick, my worry about
presenting herself as if what she's presenting, like her position is like a moderate, balanced, in the middle path. That's what I'm advocating, is just the middle path. But in fact, what she's saying is 100% in line with the social justice warrior extreme. What she's advocating leads to that. It creates that because you prioritize civic engagement, being an activist. Because if you prioritize the inner circle and your husband and kids, what does prioritizing that mean? It actually means that you prioritize it. You actually try to get married at a young age before even thinking about college. You start having children at a young age so that you have a lot of children, for example. You prioritize making your house into a home. That's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. And when we have this holistic view of the Sahabiyat and the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see that they were primarily involved with domestic duties. She didn't present that. She took these cherry-picked examples to give a distorted picture of the Sahabiyat as these ministers of finance on the battlefield fighting wars and masters of diplomacy going and traveling. And this is the image that she presented. So that's the ideal that she is driving these young Muslim women towards. And the older women in the audience, they're going to be dissatisfied with their life because she characterized them as having this kind of petty life of chores, if that's who they are. She stigmatized it. She stigmatized domestic life, and she glamorized and she made it into a religious ideal, this complete fantasy that is not connected to the actual history of the Sahabiyat and the Salaf and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she is creating exactly the supposed extreme that she's against.
Civic engagement and people going into social justice type work is people jump on a bandwagon of anything and everything that's happening today, even if it doesn't apply to us. We have a yardstick that we measure things by, and it's called the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If that cause out there fits with Islam, by all means help. And if it doesn't, you have no business.
Okay, that's enough of that. She gave me a headache. Legitimately, I have a headache now after having to listen to that. So, and that was only 30 minutes. Yeah, so this is the shameless fraud, Rania Awaad. She's giving these talks and these lectures. And yeah, it's just very shocking. But this kind of feminist message is not new. The citations that she gives, they've been regurgitated from the time of Muhammad Abdu, for example, the arch reformist Freemason from the 19th century, Azhar, colonized by the British. He was the original Muslim reformist, and people at that time wanting to reform Islam and feeling this insecurity that, the enlightened Europeans, their women go out and get educated and they don't cover themselves and they mix with the opposite sex, etc., etc. They picked out these examples from the Sahabiyat supposedly and said, see, we have that too in Islam. And this was the reform of abolishing gender norms in Islam, gender tradition, the fiqh, abolishing it through these kinds of distortions. And then that keeps getting embellished and passed down. And now feminists in 2024 or 2023 are spreading these same kinds of stories, even though they've been refuted 1,000, a million times. How many times do we have to refute Khadija was a Fortune 500 CEO? Like that meme. But they keep spreading it. So they keep spreading it. We'll keep refuting it, inshallah. Okay, that was a longer episode of Haqiqatjou. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you didn't get a headache like I did. But this is important stuff. We have to call it out. We have to discuss it. And inshallah, on upcoming episodes, if you like this analysis, this type of deep dive, leave a comment saying that you enjoyed it, maybe suggesting other things if you want me to do a deep dive analysis. It's necessary. This is the way that we create accountability, so that next time someone like Rania Awaad, before she goes and sits there and at the masjid or wherever to give a talk, she thinks twice and thinks, well, I better make sure that I am not just making stuff up because someone's going to call me out for it. If we just let them do whatever they want, say whatever they want without any pushback, then things will devolve and get worse and worse and worse. So it's when people who know better are silent that these deviants can run wild with their nonsense. So that's our show. And inshallah, I will catch you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.